Hello and welcome back to INMR. In today's podcast, I'm going to be answering the question, how far can Arsenal really go in the Champions League? They've just qualified for the quarterfinals for the first time in 14 years, so I'm going to be taking a look at what we can expect from Arsenal in the next round and potentially beyond. First of all though, let's analyse that historic last 16 win against Porto on Tuesday night. The final score was 1-1 after extra time and Arsenal won 4-2 on penalties. Despite the Emirates rocking, it was the away side who were on the front foot to begin with. So Porto started in a 4-3-3 high press. This was to pressure Arsenal as they attempted to build an attack, as they were of course at a disadvantage being a goal down. So you had Evan Nilsson, as you can see on screen here. He triggered the press by pressing Saliba, and then Raya when the back pass happened. Then number 10, Conceição, that's probably an atrocious pronunciation. He presses Gabriel to prevent passes coming out to him or to Kivior at left back. Despite this high press, Arsenal were able to break through it several times by playing into midfield where either Rice or Jorginho had dropped in. So in saying that, why did Arsenal struggle if they were doing so well against Porto's aggressive approach? Porto are a very strong defensive unit which has been their foundation for success this season. They've got the best defensive record in Portugal, averaging 0.68 goals conceded in the league per 90. They're a disciplined side and well drilled too, which is why they managed to frustrate Arsenal for so long. Yes, Arsenal didn't play to their maximum potential, it wasn't the level that we're used to seeing them at, but Porto do deserve praise for the part they played in keeping Arsenal out for so long. Porto really slowed down the tempo, but that's when you need a player to step up, and Odegaard did just that, with a world-class pass to assist Trossard to save Arsenal's UCL campaign. Since December, Odegaard has been in great playmaking form and has created 62 chances from open play, which is the most out of any player in the top 5 European leagues. Not only that, Odegaard showed his quality with feints away from pressure, ball manipulation in tight areas, separating him from most players on the pitch. Pretty quickly, Porto decided to switch to a mid to low block, which was much more successful and caused massive problems for Arsenal. Arsenal struggled to disrupt Porto's compact shape, which you can see on this passing map. It looks like a horseshoe, which shows how they were just sort of passing around Roma rather than being direct and trying to play through them. Jorginho played a key role in Arsenal's goal. He refused to resort to the backwards and sideways passing, which his other teammates were doing. Instead, his passes disrupted Porto's structure to give Arsenal more of a chance to get through to goal. He also instructed his teammates to make specific runs to disrupt Porto as well, in order to create more opportunities. A great example is Trossard's goal. So Jorginho is on the ball here, and Havertz has followed his instructions and stretched Porto's defence with a run in behind. He's on the far right of your screen. Jorginho's pass was cut out by Wendell, but that meant Porto's shape was broken and Arsenal then had their chance. It was a great bit of quality from Odegaard. With the pass, and the finish to match it from Trossard meant that Arsenal were level in the tie. There's so many class players in the Arsenal side. I think Jorginho is one that goes under the radar, but he was the catalyst for this goal, and he has to start if Arsenal face another side that opt for this mid to low block approach. For example, Atletico Madrid, who qualified on Wednesday night. One thing to remember, although Arsenal are doing very well in the league and now the Champions League, they are still learning on the job in Europe. At this stage, Arsenal are very inexperienced, but that's part of having a young squad with plenty of potential. There's always going to be a downside. In the first leg, Kai Havertz was the only Arsenal player on the pitch with knockout experience in the Champions League, and obviously the second leg you had Jorginho as well, who added a little bit more experience to the side. But aside from that, there's very little. A big surprise as well was that Saka and Saliba both struggled to settle into the game, and arguably they've been Arsenal's most consistent players over the last couple of seasons, so it was a shock to see them not get a foothold of the game. The penalty shootout was the first in the Champions League since the 2016 final between Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid. And Arsenal were absolutely brilliant. They scored 4 out of 4 of their goals, which left it all to Raya, who did absolutely superbly. His research before the shootout paid off as he saved 2 penalties to send Arsenal to their first quarter-final in the Champions League since 2010. Many doubted him at the start of the season because he immediately just stole Ramsdale's number 1 spot, but on Tuesday night he was the fans' favourite man in the stadium, and deservedly so. So we've spoken about a few Arsenal players in this podcast who have had key impacts in the Porto game, and it would be really easy to keep speaking on about them or even other players that you already know are class and me explain why. But I think instead it'll be much better to talk about somebody who goes a bit under the radar, but he's doing really, really well. And that is Ben White. So outside of North London, I don't think enough people appreciate the impact White's had on Arsenal's success, especially this season. And with this new role he's got, he's become another creative outlet for Arteta's side, which is making it really, really difficult for opponents to deal with Arsenal, more so than last season. When Ben White signed, he settled in quickly due to his versatility. As we know, he can play centre-back or full-back, and this season he's adapted to a new role which is more advanced when Arsenal are in possession to ensure that he's contributing to attacks. Arsenal's build-up shape this year has been a 2-3-5 formation, allowing Ben White to have more touches in central midfield areas, contributing to their attacking threat. This new shape also benefits Arsenal's counter-pressing ability in central areas, which means more opportunities to launch attacks when they win the ball. White's recent performances have seen him be more involved in the final third, and we can see that because in his last 5 games in the Premier League he's had 1 goal and 3 assists. His new role also includes providing support for Saka and Ødegaard, while also getting into more advanced positions and delivering crosses into the box. He's become another attacking weapon for Arsenal, giving opponents even more of a headache in matches. So, what does this all mean for Arsenal's season? First of all, it's a massive mental boost overcoming a side like Porto. They now know that they can break down sides who like to sit back and absorb pressure. It also means that they're going to be very, very busy in April. They're going to have a lot less rest for the games against Aston Villa and Wolves, but with the international break coming up, injured players will be able to return and provide depth for those games. It's going to be very interesting to see how Arteta approaches this at a key stage of the season, especially considering that the next game is against City in the Premier League at the Etihad, which of course is going to be a title decider, and that could shape how Arteta approaches both competitions. So to answer the question, how far can Arsenal go in the Champions League this season? I think personally the semi-final would be pretty fair. It's going to be really tough to reach the final, but I'm certainly not going to write them off. For me, only Real Madrid are unbeatable for Arsenal, maybe Bayern as well, but of course we've seen them slip up at times, so they wouldn't be totally impossible to beat. They've proven that they can beat City, but over 2 legs it certainly would be a struggle. But aside from that, I'd be confident for them to win all the others. So that would be against Borussia Dortmund, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona and PSG. I think they could definitely beat those 4 sides. By the time this podcast is out, Arsenal will have been drawn against their quarter-final opponents, but at the time of filming I don't know who they've got. But overall I do think Arsenal have the potential to do very well despite the inexperience at this stage. That is where I'm going to end today's podcast, but there's plenty of others to check out as this is the 3rd podcast I've done this week. On Monday I analysed the Liverpool vs Man City game. Wednesday I previewed the Brighton vs Roma game, and there's a lot more coming next week. For extra content, make sure to follow INMR on X and Instagram, and when my website is back up and running, be sure to check that out too. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.